My wife handed me divorce papers at her law firm's launch party, paid for with my $20 million. Under the crystal chandeliers at the Hilton Chicago, the room clapped. I pocketed the envelope and walked out smiling. I'm Ethan Cole, basement to boardroom, 42, self-made. I didn't build an empire by trusting promises. I sign checks, and I keep receipts. They call me the trial husband. Cute. Tonight, the firm with her name on the door, Clark & Hayes, goes on trial. Here's what you'll see if you stick around. Payroll glitches, vendors pending, a lease in my name, and one quiet paragraph, section 7.3, that decides who actually owns the future. She made a scene. I wrote the script. This isn't about anger, it's about control. The best revenge isn't smashing a glass, it's moving a decimal. If public humiliation was Act 1, watch what Act 2 does to the lights on Madison Street. Think she ended the story? Press play. I'm just getting started. Watch closely. I grew up on hand-me-down computers and black coffee. My first office was a damp basement with a thrift store desk and a router that overheated if I breathed on it. I coded at night, sold by day, and ate whatever was on sale at the corner deli. One winter, the heat failed, and I typed in gloves. My landlord wanted the rent. My bank wanted a plan. So I made one. I kept a yellow notebook with every dollar in, every dollar out. Nothing fancy. Just discipline. Clients didn't care about buzzwords. They wanted a real fix, on time, without drama. When I shipped, I sent a clean invoice and followed up until I saw the wire hit. That rhythm, build, bill, confirm, became my breathing. It's not romantic, but it works. Plenty of people talk about vision. Fewer can afford the light bill. I learned to do both. That's how I survived. That's how I learned to never back down. The business took shape in small, proud steps. A dentist's office needed records that didn't vanish when the power blinked. A trucking company needed deliveries tracked without 6 phone calls. I listened, I built, I delivered. Word spread through church friends, Rotary breakfasts, and Little League bleachers. No pitch deck, just results. The first big contract changed my posture. $250,000, paid on time, no excuses. I remember the bank app lighting up and the way my shoulders dropped. I bought better servers, a better chair, and better sleep. I still drove my old car. I wasn't trying to impress anyone, I was trying to last. The company grew, one honest promise at a time. When a system crashed at 2 a.m., I fixed it at 2:15. People notice that. They remember the person who answers. That's how you go from a name in a spreadsheet to a number on speed dial. That's how I became dependable and dangerous. I met Madison at a legal aid fundraiser in River North. The room was loud, the wine was average, and the speeches were too long. She wasn't. She asked sharper questions than the panel. She didn't flirt. She cross-examined. "What problem do you actually solve?" she said. I told her, chaos. I turned chaos into checklists. She smiled like a verdict. Law school had taught her to argue, but she didn't want to win points. She wanted to win cases. "One day, I'm opening a firm that matters," she said. Not a dream, a plan. She talked about tenants threatened with winter evictions and families buried in paperwork they couldn't read. She wanted a place that took those cases and still paid the lights. Purpose and profit in the same sentence. That's rare. We closed the night with cheap tacos and honest stories. No promises. Just that feeling when two blueprints line up. I didn't fall in love fast. I fell in line with her mission. With Madison, we kept the romance simple and the conversations real. We compared credit scores and childhood wounds. We talked about trust the way other couples talk about vacations. I proposed on a windy night by the lake, both of us wrapped in one scarf, laughing at how cold it was. No fireworks, just a yes that felt like solid ground. We kept our wedding small, family, a few friends, and a cake from a bakery that still writes names in buttercream. Afterwards, we went back to work. That's who we were. She lived in statutes and case files. I lived in specs and invoices. Our calendars were full, but our values matched. We didn't say forever, like a fairy tale. We said it like a contract we intended to perform. Love is soft, life is not. You need both. We promised truth, even when it's hard. Especially then. Back then, I believed that promise would be enough. Back then, I believed her. Madison's dream didn't arrive as a surprise. It grew in our conversations and our kitchen sink debates. If we wait for perfect timing, she said, we'll miss the clients who need us now. She showed me spreadsheets, staffing plans, and a list of judges who respected her work. She wanted a headquarters in the Loop, close to courts, trains, and the heartbeat of the city. Not flashy, credible. She didn't ask me to fund it, she asked me to believe in it. I did both. We sketched an opening timeline on a napkin, licenses, leases, software, hires. I brought my operator's eye, she brought her litigator's grit. We trimmed the wish list, kept the must-haves, and pushed the nice-to-haves to next quarter. It felt like our best selves pointed in the same direction. You can feel when a plan has air under it. We were ready to jump. I didn't know the wind would change. I didn't know how hard we would hit. I wired the first $5 million on a Tuesday morning. Banks move slower than promises, so I spent the waiting time building folders. Every dollar would have a document trail. Term sheets, performance clauses, exit language no one ever expects to use, until they do. I wasn't hiding anything. I was protecting everything. Marriage is love, investment is accountability. They can live in the same house if you keep the doors labeled. Madison rolled her eyes at the stack of signatures, then signed anyway. You're thorough, she said. I took it as a compliment. We agreed to milestones, space, staff, clients, cash flow. Hit the marks, release the funds. I wasn't a romantic handing over a blank check. I was a partner, backing a plan. We toasted with takeout and paper cups. It was corny and perfect. That afternoon, I watched the confirmation ping my phone. The money was real. The risk was mine. The future, I thought, belonged to both of us. The office came together like a time lapse. Bare walls, tape on the floor, then glass, wood, light. We chose durable desks, honest chairs, and conference rooms that didn't echo. I bought computers that booted fast and stayed quiet. No cutting corners that would feel expensive later. We set up calendars, billing, and a simple system that told us who owed what, when. People laugh at systems until they save the day. The sign went up, Clark and Hayes, LLP. It looked crisp against the skyline. I felt proud and a little tired the way you feel after painting your own house. We ran drills for intake calls and first-day filings. Madison tried on the role of managing partner and it fit. She had a way of turning a hallway chat into a plan. I saw it. Everyone did. When the final inspections cleared, I stood by the windows and watched the city move. We had built a place where justice could walk in and sit down. Good offices are empty without good people. We recruited hungry associates and steady paralegals, folks who return calls and write like they mean it. The offers were fair. The benefits were decent. We weren't the biggest name, but we felt like the right one. Then Brandon Hayes arrived, resume polished, smile polished more. He shook my hand with both of his and called me the man behind the curtain. He meant it as a compliment. It landed wrong. He filled rooms fast, learned names fast, moved fast. Some people are engines. Some are edges. Brandon was sharp in ways I couldn't quite place. Madison liked his courtroom swagger. Clients did too. I told myself to get used to him. Every team needs a closer. That's true, until the closer treats the team like a crowd. The day we signed our 10th hire, I felt a flicker in my gut. I've learned to listen to those. I didn't. Not then. By fall, the calendar looked like a victory parade. New matters, solid retainers, a launch party on the books. Madison thrived on the pace. She lived at the office and called it joy. I took the late-night shifts no one sees. Insurance certificates, vendor contracts, little lines that keep big ships from taking on water. We called it a perfect partnership. She hunted. I hardened the walls. We didn't fight, but we did skip hard talks. Password changes, for security. Phones face down, out of habit. Meetings that ended later than the calendar said. I noticed. I chose patience. Marriage asks for that. Marriage asks for, business does not. On a Tuesday, I found a form unsigned and a statement reconciled to the penny by someone who wasn't our bookkeeper. I left it on her desk with a sticky note. Did we switch vendors? She texted a heart and said, handled. I wanted to believe her. I did. That faith carried me. straight to the cliff. 2 years slipped by in deposits, invoices, and late-night coffee. I didn't dump 20 million in one shot. I funded in stages: space, staff, systems, runway. On Sunday nights, we'd sit at the kitchen table with yellow pads, 2 pens, and one rule: no surprises. We reviewed burn rate like other couples review vacation photos. When milestones hit, I pressed send. The money moved, the plan advanced, and we kept our promise to stay honest and on time. We didn't have fancy celebrations, just takeout and a shared glance that said, "We're still standing." Older friends told me, "Protect your peace, protect your paper." I did both. I kept receipts, not resentments. I believed we were building a business that would outlive our moods. 20 million isn't a flex to me. It's responsibility measured in zeros. You don't get that back by wishing. You get it back by working the plan. And our plan, at least on paper, looked bulletproof. Every transfer wore a suit of paperwork. Wire confirmation, signed contract, clear purpose. My attorney called me cautious. Some would say paranoid, he joked, half proud, half puzzled. I don't apologize for guardrails. Marriage needs love. Money needs rules. I color-coded folders, labeled everything plain: lease, payroll, insurance. If a stranger opened my cabinet, they'd understand our business in 10 minutes. That was the point. When you're older, you know memory is kind until it isn't. The stack on my desk wasn't romance. It was recall. Who promised what, by when, and what happens if they don't. Madison teased me about the signatures. "You trust me, don't you?" I did. That's why I documented. Trust isn't the absence of records, it's the confidence to share them. We shook hands at the end of each review like partners closing a deal. I filed the copies, locked the drawer, and slept well. Paper doesn't panic. Paper remembers. Paper wins when emotions don't. I've learned it's cheaper to prevent a fire than to rebuild after one. Older viewers know this by heart. Annual physical, roof inspections, oil changes before the engine screams. I treated our firm the same way. We set limits on spending, we set dates for decisions, and we set consequences for delays. Not threats, guardrails. Madison rolled her eyes at the word consequences, then admitted the structure kept her focused. We didn't argue about feelings, we agreed on numbers. If the client count dipped below target, we paused hires. If accounts receivable aged past 30 days, we called, not texted, until we had a plan. I wasn't trying to control her dream. I was trying to keep it from drifting into a nightmare. That's the quiet discipline nobody posts about. Small, boring choices that avoid big, loud disasters. We were building muscles for a marathon, not a sprint. I thought our prudence made us safe. In reality, it only made us ready. The launch wasn't a someday idea. It had a date: Hilton Chicago, Grand Ballroom, Saturday, 7 p.m. We walked the space with clipboards. The event manager talked lighting and load-in. I talked power strips and backup microphones. We tested the projector twice and the playlist 3 times. I wrote the deposit check with a steady hand and asked for the insurance binder by email and hard copy. Older couples know the drill. You plan the big night, but you respect the small risks that ruin it. We circled the date on the refrigerator calendar like teenagers and then went back to work like grown-ups. The guest list began to scroll long. Judges, partners, clients who'd become friends. I ordered extra valet staff and a coat check even if the weather behaved. You can't control the headlines, but you can control the line at the door. The ballroom glittered in my mind. We had one job now: show up ready. Madison rehearsed her speech in our living room, heels off, posture perfect. She didn't need a microphone to fill the room. She spoke about access and fairness, about taking cases that matter, about ordinary people who deserve expert lawyers. She had that gift, turning principle into momentum. The dress arrived 2 weeks early, discreet box, bigger smile. I signed for more rentals, glassware that felt heavy in your hand, linens that didn't wrinkle, a stage that didn't wobble. She approved menus, debated centerpieces, and timed the program to the minute. No awkward pauses, she said. No dead air. We turned our fridge into a war room, magnets holding cue cards, sticky notes layered like shingles. She promised a short surprise for the finale, something the room would remember. I didn't press. I liked surprises when they served the moment, not the ego. The night was hers to command. My role was simple: protect the edges so her spotlight stayed bright. The RSVP list looked like a law school yearbook grew up and bought expensive ties, names I'd seen in headlines, people who made decisions, not comments. We debated plus ones and place cards longer than I care to admit. If you're over 30, you know the politics of seating charts can rival actual politics. We added a few community leaders who returned our calls when we were the little name. No one forgets a favor. I booked a photographer who shoots testimonies, not just teeth. This wasn't a wedding, it was a statement. We weren't selling champagne, we were selling competence. I kept one row of chairs open near the back, reserved in my mind for any surprise guests. I've learned to leave space, for grace or for chaos. The RSVP counter ticked past the fire code number and then slid back once the cautious folks withdrew. I saw enough yeses to feel momentum. A room like that doesn't gather by accident. Her father, Judge Clark, shook my hand with the same grip he used on a gavel. Firm, brief, final. He'd never been cruel to me, just careful. In his world, men say things and paper proves them. That's a language I speak. He asked about the firm's first-year targets, not about the appetizers, and nodded when I recited them without notes. Ambitious, he said, which can mean risky or worthy. I chose worthy. Older men talk in subtext. You learn to hear the tone, not just the words. He said he was proud of Madison. He didn't say he was proud of me. That landed like a small weight in my chest, not heavy, noticeable. We clinked 2 club sodas and stood in the kind of silence only men who measure can share. On his way out, he adjusted a picture frame on our mantel by a 1/4 inch and smiled. Details decide cases. He's right. Details decide everything. I wore the Tom Ford suit I'd bought after our first big contract, the one I promised not to outgrow, in size or attitude. The tailor let it out a hair and patted my shoulder like a coach. My shoes held a deep shine I saved for funerals and firsts. Launches or both, depending on outcomes. I tied my knot slow, the way my father taught me, even though YouTube would have been faster. Some rituals you keep because they hold you still. I checked my phone for last-minute surprises. Nothing urgent. I checked my pockets. Phone, wallet, mints, pen. Then I looked in the mirror long enough to remember why I started. Work that mattered, people I trusted, a future I could explain without flinching. I whispered a prayer for steady hands and clear eyes. I texted Madison. Proud of you. See you there. She replied with a flame and a heart. I smiled, locked the door, and headed for the lights. Hilton Chicago glows differently on nights like this. The lobby hummed with tuxedos and perfume, the kind of energy that makes strangers check their name tags twice. I greeted staff by name because I always do. People remember respect. The event manager gave me a thumbs up. Sound check clean, slides loaded, clock on schedule. I breathed easier. Smaller rooms had taught me bigger lessons. If the microphones work and the coffee is hot, you've won half the night. I scanned the floor plan one more time, adjusted a seating card, and smoothed a wrinkle in the welcome banner to satisfy no one but myself. Guests began to arrive in gentle waves, old professors, new associates, neighbors in suits they wear for weddings and jury duty. Hands found shoulders, voices found home. I stood near the entrance and thanked people for coming, meaning it. This wasn't just a party, it was a promise kept, publicly, the kind that deserves a witness. Compliments come easy in a bright room. Looks incredible. Proud night. She's a star. I nodded, smiled, and meant it. I heard, behind every great woman, more than once and took no offense. I wasn't chasing the microphone. I was guarding the machinery. Still, little things tugged at me. The program listed sponsors, not investors. The press release mentioned generous supporters without names. Maybe they wanted the firm to stand on its own. Maybe I preferred it that way. I shook hands with a reporter who asked for a quote. I gave him one clean sentence about service and stewardship. He thanked me and looked past me. I've been invisible before. It never scared me. It made me free. From the balcony, the chandelier reflected 100 tiny versions of us, glittering and unaware. I took my seat near the aisle, close to exits and decisions. The lights dimmed, the music dipped, and the stage found its voice. I was halfway to my seat when I heard it. Two associates whispering like kids behind a locker door. Trial husband. Not loud, but sharp enough to cut. Older folks know that kind of comment. It's the laugh someone swallows when a mortgage falls through. It's the shrug when a layoff list goes up. I didn't turn. I let it land and pass. My father taught me to count to 10 before I answer a fool. I counted to 12. I took a slow breath and fixed my cuff. You learn with years that not every insult deserves your face. Some deserve your silence and your record keeping. The band tested the microphones. Glassware chimed. People in good suits pretended not to notice each other, noticing everything. I kept moving, shoulders square. If they wanted a scene, they could buy tickets somewhere else. I had one job tonight: show up steady. The whisper didn't bruise me. It bookmarked me. I decided to remember their voices. When humiliation visits, it doesn't kick the door. It drops the room 10 degrees. The laughter thins. The eyes skim past you. You feel 15 and 42 at the same time. I smiled anyway. That wasn't denial. That was discipline. Anyone who's lived long enough knows the smile you wear to a parent's difficult doctor visit or a boss's bad meeting. You straighten your tie so your hands don't shake. You choose posture over panic. I found my place near the aisle. Good line of sight, easy exit if the night went sideways. A waiter offered me sparkling water. I took it because hands do better when they hold something. The band shifted to a lower key and the MC reached the part where the spotlight matters. I stared at the stage lights and told myself the same line I use in emergencies. We planned for this. I didn't know what this was yet. I knew I'd be ready when it named itself. Madison walked out like she owned gravity. The room leaned toward her without moving. She wore the kind of calm you can't rent, earned, not borrowed. If you've ever watched someone do the thing they were born to do, you know the feeling. Pride in your chest, worry under it. She thanked the partners, the staff, the community, and the judges who showed up on a cold night. Her voice filled the corners without pushing. I stood to clap before I knew better. Habit, history, hope. She nodded in my direction, a quick acknowledgement, the kind that looks generous on camera. I took it as a sign we were still a team. The logo pulsed behind her. Clark and Hayes, LLP. The drone shots rolled of the office windows, the glass, the wood, the light. I remembered hanging those lights. I remembered every invoice. The applause set down. The room held its breath. I sat, palms open, ready for the next beat to land. She told the origin story like a litigator, the clients who get ignored, the cases that matter, the promise to stand between people and the systems that can swallow them. We'd workshopped those lines at our kitchen table. Tonight they were polished to courtroom shine. I listened for we and heard I. Maybe it was nerves. Maybe it was narrative. Maybe it was the first crisp edge of something else. The audience loved the mission. So did I. This is where older listeners nod. We know purpose sells because it's the only thing worth buying at this price. She introduced Brandon with flair. He basked. Cameras clicked. I clapped careful. The speech turned toward the future. Expansion, clinics, training, justice you could touch. It sounded like the plan we built, minus the scaffolding that held it. The MC stepped aside. The spotlight tightened. Madison reached for the lectern and then paused. The pause was too long for a misread. That's when I felt the shift. Madison opened her clutch and pulled out a manila envelope. Not a cue card, not a thank you note. A document, thick enough to have chapters. Paper has a sound. Older ears know it. Wills, mortgages, medical forms, some pages weigh more than others because of what they carry. The light hit the edge and flashed. I recognized that flash the way you recognize a storm at the horizon. The bandleader looked down. The MC stepped back in half a step, then thought better. My heart didn't pound. It steadied. I've signed enough contracts to know when a new chapter starts. She held the envelope like an exhibit. Before we open our doors, she said, one piece of business. Her voice was smooth, and something else. Decided. Brandon slid into the shadows near the wings. Judge Clark folded his arms. The audience leaned forward in one silent wave. I braced, not against a blow, but for the weight of whatever was about to arrive. She stepped off the stage. Heels on marble sound like a metronome in a quiet room. Click, click, click. Each step counted down the part of my life that didn't know what was inside that envelope. People parted without being told, the way crowds do at parades and in emergencies. I stayed where I was. When you're older, you learn that running to or from a moment usually makes it worse. Stand, breathe, receive. She closed the distance, and the scent of her perfume pulled up 100 small memories. Dates after night court, coffee before dawn, her head on my shoulder while we argued about fonts. Memory is not kind in moments like this. It paints and it stings. She stopped one arm's length away. You can tell a lot from how someone holds paper. Loose means doubt. Tight means fear. Flat and level means a verdict. The room went quiet enough to hear the room. The last click landed. So did she. Madison smiled, not happy, not grateful. The smile you see on a surgeon before the cut. Necessary, remote, decided. I looked for mercy in it and found none. She spoke without a microphone and still reached the back row. Ethan, she said, and my name felt public in a way it never had. If you've ever been called to the front of a classroom for something you didn't do, you know the sensation. Your skin is there before your bones arrive. She held up the envelope like a ribbon to be cut. I thought of all the documents we had signed together and how ink can be both a promise and a knife. I wasn't going to flinch. I've outlasted outages, lawsuits, and winters that crack sidewalks. I can outlast this moment. Her eyes were steady. Nothing to negotiate, nothing to soften. She raised her chin a fraction. The room leaned in another inch. Then she delivered the line she had rehearsed. The first case for Clark and Hayes, she said, is my divorce. Clean delivery. No tremor. She placed the envelope in my open hand and let it go. For half a beat, the ballroom forgot how to breathe. Then sound returned in pieces. An inhale on the left, a phone camera beep on the right, a gasp that felt like it belonged to everyone. Brandon didn't smile. He smirked. Judge Clark's jaw moved once, like a man choosing between words and wisdom. The photographers lifted their lenses. I could see our faces reflected in the glass, hers composed, mine unreadable by choice. Older listeners understand this discipline. You save your reaction for later, where it does work instead of damage. She stepped back, turned to the crowd, and gave them the headline they wanted. The applause began scattered, then found a rhythm. It wasn't for me. That's fine. I wasn't there to be clapped for. I was there to understand exactly what was true. The ballroom became a courtroom without a judge, jurors with phones, counsel with opinions, evidence in my hand. People mouthed "wow" like a prayer they didn't believe. A reporter I'd just met typed with his thumbs like the screen owed him money. A partner from a rival firm nodded, not at me, but at the move. Cruel, clean, headline ready. I scanned for exits, for faces I trusted, for any corner that felt human. The band stared at the floor. The MC studied the ceiling. I thought of older friends who told me, when someone shows you who they are in public, believe them. I believed her. I slid my thumb under the flap but didn't open it. Not here, not for their show. I looked at Madison once, the way you look at a house you're about to sell. One last inventory of what's gone and what you'll never get back. Then I made my decision. Not fight, not plead. Something cleaner. I folded the envelope once and slipped it into my inside pocket. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and walked the same path she had walked to get to me. People moved. A few reached out and stopped themselves. If you've ever left a bad meeting with your head high, you know the motion. One foot, then the other, no hurry, no hurry, no hurry. The lobby doors opened on the first try. Cold night, clear sky, lake wind. I took it all in. I loosened my tie and let the air rinse the heat from my face. Then I did the thing nobody expected. I smiled. Not a performance. A choice. Because humiliation is loud and quick, but paper is quiet and patient. And I had paper. Inside my pocket was a problem. Inside my files was an answer. I texted the valet that I'd walk. I wanted the time. The city hummed. My plan woke up. The night wasn't over. The story wasn't either. Chicago night air hit me like a reset button. The lake wind took the heat out of my face and left me with facts. People think the loudest thing in a story is the humiliation. It isn't. It's the decision you make after. I loosened my tie and walked past couples waiting on rides, past a bellman who's seen 1,000 big nights and knows some will age poorly. I've been that guy who overreacts. Not tonight. Older friends taught me the trick. Breathe, then count what you can control. I had a spine. I had a plan. I had paper. The envelope in my jacket was the headline. The binders at home were the article. I didn't need to win the room. I needed to win the ledger. I turned north toward the Gold Coast, shoes steady on cold concrete. The city hummed like a server room. Somewhere a train screeched. I smiled, small and true. The scene was over. The work was next. My condo isn't fancy. It's functional. Good locks, quiet elevator, a desk that doesn't wobble. I hung the jacket on a chair, washed my face, and poured 2 fingers of something old enough to have patience. Older listeners know the ritual. You don't fix a mess angry, you fix it organized. I set the glass down and pulled a legal pad. Inventory, I wrote. On one side, assets. On the other, access. I listed facts I could prove. Leases, licenses, logins, accounts, original terms. I wasn't making a revenge list. I was making a maintenance list. Marriages end, obligations don't. I checked my phone, missed calls stacking like unpaid parking tickets. I silenced it. If a fire alarm isn't mine to pull, I don't touch it. Not yet. I straightened the envelope on the table and ignored it. Tonight wasn't about what she handed me. It was about what I had already built. Time to open the room I built it in. Behind a row of casebooks is a paneled door only my thumb knows how to find. It slides open with that slow, certain sound older people trust more than promises. My safe isn't for watches. It's for proof. I spun the dial, heard the click, and pulled the handle like a man opening an argument. Inside, binders labeled plain. No clever names, no games. Seed capital. Lease. Insurance. Employment agreements. IT systems. If I got hit by a bus, a stranger could read my life in an hour and make decent choices for me. That's how I organize. I stacked the first 4 on the desk and flipped on the lamp that only shines where I point it. Paper smells like history when it's thick enough. People forget that. Phones blink. Paper backs you up. I opened the top binder to the table of contents, simple and clean. Tonight I wasn't a husband paging memories. I was a lender checking terms. Seed capital. Dated wires, signed receipts, and a note on each transfer explaining the why. Not romance, reason. Lease. The Madison Avenue address is a Chicago loop in this version. Fine, the point stands. The lease sits in my name with a clean security deposit receipt. People. Offers, start dates, salaries, and the one clause that keeps adults adult. Employment is tied to the firm's financial stability. Everyone nods at that line when hiring. They feel it when payroll hiccups. Power, vendor lists, service contracts, software licenses, admin contacts. The boring grid that keeps the lights on and the printers honest. I'd color tab the sections because your future self deserves an easy scavenger hunt. I ran my finger down each index and pictured every conversation it represented. No flourishes, no filler, just agreements, countersigned. I felt my breath even out. The room, the binders, the lamp, they all said the same thing. You did the work. Now do the next part. I flipped to performance and breach of fiduciary duty. Big words, simple ideas. Performance means you do what you said you'd do. Breach means you didn't, and it costs someone real money. Older adults know this without Latin. You promised the roof wouldn't leak. It leaks. Fix it or refund it. Our partnership documents had plain guardrails, reporting, disclosure, and what happens if trust goes missing. Not threats. Procedures. I don't write clauses to trap people. I write them to remind us how to behave when feelings sprint ahead of facts. Madison had signed every page. So had I. That matters. A signature isn't a hug. It's a handshake with consequences. I pictured the ballroom, the envelope, the applause that chose a side before the facts showed up. Paper doesn't clap. Paper clarifies. I placed 2 sticky flags on key paragraphs and closed the binder softly, like setting down a tool you'll use again very soon. I would. There are roles that mix well and roles that don't. You can be a husband and a handyman, a husband and a co-pilot, a husband and a bank. That only works if everyone respects both titles. Tonight, I stopped trying to be both. In these pages, I wasn't the guy who made dinner or found her keys. I was the investor who funded a firm and expected it to keep its side of the ledger. That sounds cold if you're 20. If you're older, you know it's called being a grown-up. Love is a gift. Investment is a responsibility. I separated the two like wires in a box so the whole house wouldn't short. My pen scratched out a list of immediate steps: review admin access, confirm account balances, flag autopays, check payroll dates, no speeches, checklists. I slid my wedding band along the table, then stopped it with my thumb. I wasn't erasing a life. I was protecting the part I could still save. I opened the laptop, cleared my desk, and typed credentials. My fingers remembered faster than my eyes. 2-factor pinged a backup email I control, the same one I set up during happier days because happy days end and audits don't. The dashboard loaded. Clean. Familiar. My name still held admin. People forget to lock doors they don't think you'll walk through. I walked through. I checked who else could move money, who could add users, who could flip switches. I wasn't hunting for gotchas. I was mapping the fire exits. Older listeners have done this with family finances, making sure you know where the passwords live before life gets loud. I confirmed recovery numbers, checked alert rules, and printed the page that tells a neat story to a messy room. Everything I needed to act, I had. Everything I didn't need, anger, noise, revenge speeches, I set aside. I clicked accounts. The numbers were next. Numbers don't lie. They only report. 2 main accounts, operating and reserves, sat just under 2 million combined. Enough to look rich, not enough to be sloppy. Upcoming obligations scrolled by. Lease due on the 1st, insurance mid-month, vendors on 30-day cycles, payroll Friday at 8 a.m. sharp. I felt the weight of every paycheck. These weren't enemies. They were people who expect their mortgage to clear. That's why the plan had to be precise. I opened the vendor list: catering, flowers, printers, software, coffee service. Every name a small piece of a larger promise. I checked the audit log. No major changes since the day before the party. Good. Clean water in the pipes. I printed the schedule and drew a box around the dates that mattered. The firm could glide through next week if no one touched anything. If. I tapped the desk twice, the way I do when I've found the edge of a problem. I had time, authority, and a steady hand. That's enough. I don't hit brakes in traffic unless I have to. I downshift. Tonight, I downshifted. First move: suspend automatic vendor payments for a routine verification review. Not canceled. Paused. People cooperate when you sound like maintenance, not mayhem. Second, flag the payroll run for manual confirmation. That means real eyes on numbers before money moves. If everything checks out, fine. If not, the delay tells the truth. Third, adjust non-essential subscriptions to monthly instead of annual. Cash flow breathes easier when it isn't wearing a corset. Each click left a clear note in the log. No secrets, just stewardship. Older folks will recognize the rhythm. You don't throw the breaker, you flip the right switch. I watched the confirmation emails arrive like polite knocks. Your settings have been updated. The system asked if I wanted to proceed. I did. I wasn't blowing up a building. I was checking the foundation after an earthquake. The structure would answer me by morning. I reviewed the changes twice, then once more for the future version of me who might be tired and grateful I was thorough. I saved screenshots. I printed confirmations. I placed them behind the sticky flagged clauses like exhibits building their own closing argument. The cursor hovered over submit for a heartbeat. I thought about the kid in the basement with the overheating router and the landlord who wanted the rent. I thought about Madison's first mock trial and the day we promised each other truth. Then I clicked. The system acknowledged my choices with a tone that sounded like a seatbelt clicking into place. I sat back and let the quiet settle. Outside, sirens braided with lake wind. Inside, the lamp hummed. I didn't text. I didn't post. I wrote a single line at the bottom of my legal pad. You have done what you can do tonight. Then I capped my pen. Tomorrow the phones would ring. Tonight, the paper could rest. By 8 a.m., the city was awake, and so was the damage. Emails stacked like snow on a windshield. Payroll error. Payment rejected. Urgent. Vendor dispute. The front desk couldn't brew coffee. The machine needed a code only paid invoices unlock. Lawyers don't scare easy, but people who didn't get paid on Friday do. I refreshed the dashboard once, twice, then stopped. When you're older, you know the rule. Don't chase the alarm, check the batteries. The audit log showed my weekend notes just where I left them. Verification holds, manual confirmation, nothing hidden. My phone lit up with unknown numbers that suddenly felt very familiar. I set it face down and wrote 3 lines on a legal pad. Stay factual, stay simple, stay steady. Revenge is loud, accountability is quiet. I poured black coffee, took one slow breath, and turned on Do Not Disturb. Let the noise find its own ceiling. My job was the floor. I intended to hold it. Madison called 47 times before lunch. Brandon left a dozen voicemails that sounded like a man bargaining with a mirror. My attorney texted, "You good?" I answered with a thumbs up and a sentence. Everything documented. If you've lived long enough, you know the temptation to pick up and fix a feeling. Feelings don't clear payroll. Systems do. I wasn't dodging them. I was protecting the sequence. First facts, then phone calls, then decisions we can live with in daylight. I answered 2 numbers that mattered. The bank's fraud team and the landlord's office. Both confirmed receipt of my notices. Both used the phrase I needed. Within rights. That's not poetic, but it sleeps well. A reporter emailed for comment. I replied, "We will have a statement after an internal review." True, and not today. The city outside my window moved like it always does on Mondays. Fast, indifferent, honest. I finished my coffee, capped my pen, and drew a line under the morning. Before I left the condo, I wrote out a 1-page term sheet in plain English, the way you'd explain a mortgage to family. What happened? What fixes it? What changes from here? No legal fireworks, just the bones. I added a deadline, 24 hours. I stapled a prepaid mailer to the back because professionals document acceptance. Then I pulled the party envelope from my jacket and set it beside my terms. 2 worlds, same paper. I didn't open hers. I knew what it said, and I knew what mine meant. I slid my page into a cream envelope and sealed it with a flat palm. Older friends taught me that some moments deserve ceremony, even if it's just at your kitchen table. I wrote her name clean across the front. No bitterness in the pen, no flourish in the letters. The doorman buzzed. A visitor waited downstairs. Timing, it seems, still has a sense of humor. I picked up both envelopes. Only one mattered. Sophie from the firm looked like she'd sprinted through a wind tunnel, hair up, mascara down, voice shaking, but brave. No one got paid. Vendors are calling. The coffee. She caught herself, embarrassed, then laughed because sometimes that's how you keep from crying. I poured her water and let her breathe. "I'm not here to yell," I said. "You didn't cause this." Older viewers know, never aim your anger at the messenger who works the phones. She handed me a legal pad with questions from leadership. I handed her the cream envelope. "Give this to Madison, personally. 24 hours to respond. Everything you need to know is on 1 page." She read the first line and looked up, surprised at how simple it was. "Thank you," she said, small but sincere. At the door, she turned back. "Is this fixable?" I chose the only true answer. "If we act like adults." The elevator closed on her worried face. My terms were now in motion. By noon, a calendar invite landed. Emergency meeting 2 p.m. Conference room A. Required, partners, finance, HR. Optional, me. Optional told me everything. I replied, "Attending, bring corporate records." Then I emailed the board address and attached 3 pages, admin logs, payment holds, and the sections of our agreement that fit on a screen without squinting. No adjectives, no heat, just dates and signatures. If you've ever handled a family estate, you know this move. Get the paperwork in the room before the opinions arrive. Brandon called twice more. I let it roll to voicemail. Sometimes letting a person hear themselves is kinder than giving them an audience. I put on the same suit from Saturday, not for drama, but for continuity, and packed a thin brief. I left the condo early and walked the last 8 blocks. Movement empties noise. By the time I hit the lobby, my pulse was a metronome. The receptionist avoided my eyes, then offered a small nod. We were ready. Conference room A smelled like coffee that never showed up. The glass walls made everyone honest. Madison sat at the head, not regal now, tired, guarded, eyes like someone who has read bad news with her name on it. The chair to her right, Brandon's, was empty. A partner said he had personal matters. That phrase does extra work on days like this. HR looked worried. Finance looked gray. I set my brief on the table and passed copies of the audit log to each side. We have 3 issues, I said. Cash flow, control, and credibility. They're connected. I kept my tone like a flight attendant in mild turbulence. Calm, specific, not here to debate the weather. A junior associate clicked a pen so fast it sounded like rain. I waited for eyes to meet mine. Older adults learn this. A pause can do more than a speech. When the room settled, I slid one more document onto the table. The cover read, Restructure. I don't raise my voice. I raise exhibits. Lease. My name. Capital. Staged. Documented. Payroll. Flagged. Not canceled. Vendor holds. Temporary. With notes. Then the paragraph the room needed to see. The partner protections we all initialed, including remedies for misuse and misrepresentation. Not to hurt anyone. To protect everyone. I read it once, slow, like a pastor who wants the back row to hear the scripture, not his opinion of it. Madison stared at the paper the way you stare at a test you studied for and still hate. "Why didn't you come to me first?" she asked. "Because you made this public first," I said, steady. It had to be corrected in the same light. The room didn't move. I turned the last page, a simple summary. To restore operations, adopt the following changes immediately. I pushed a pen across the table, not towards her throat, toward our responsibility. The glass walls felt closer. The empty chair felt louder. I kept it in simple language. 1. Leadership changes. 2. Financial oversight shifts to the investor who funded operations. 3. Accounts unfrozen after signatures, not speeches. 4. Partner misconduct addressed in writing. I didn't use the word fired. I used removed for cause, because words matter and so do records. Madison stays as counsel if she chooses, I added. No one loses a livelihood today if we act like professionals. An older partner exhaled like he'd been holding his breath since Friday. "What if we refuse?" he asked. I flipped my copy of the calendar to the next payroll date and tapped it. "You'll refuse the math. Then the math will refuse you." That landed. Numbers persuade where pride won't. Madison rubbed her temple, then looked at the door Brandon should have walked through. She whispered his name without saying it. I didn't pile on. "Decide based on documents, not ghosts." The printer in the corner woke up with a small whir. It sounded like consent. We negotiated like adults at a kitchen table. Firm, fair, no shouting. HR asked about staff morale. "Pay people and tell the truth," I said. Finance asked how fast the holds lift. Same day the signatures land. A partner wanted severance for Brandon. He spent company money to build his brand. That's cause. He can rebuild on his own time. Madison asked for one change. No public statement naming her beyond what's required. I agreed. Dignity is a shared asset. I added 2 board seats for oversight and quarterly reporting everyone could live with. I didn't ask for the moon. I asked for lights that stay on. The room leaned toward yes, then hesitated at the edge like swimmers at cold water. I slid the pen toward Madison. "We end the chaos now," I said, "or the phones keep ringing without answers." She looked down at her hands, then at the signatures we'd already made together. Her fingers closed around the pen. The room held still. Madison signed first, slow and precise, like she wanted each letter to earn its place. The scratch of the pen was louder than any speech we could have given. I countersigned where the tabs told me to, then handed the pages to finance. "Unfreeze the essentials," I said. "Payroll, rent, insurance, vendors in order of need, not noise." HR asked if they should announce changes now. After deposits land, I said. People hear better with full accounts. Madison kept her seat, eyes on the table, grief and relief wrestling in the same small space. I stood and gathered my copies. We didn't shake hands. We didn't have to. The work would prove what the moment only promised. As I reached the door, the printer spit out the last confirmation page, time-stamped, neat, final. I tucked it behind the term sheet I'd written at my kitchen table. Outside, the hallway felt wider. Inside, the room finally breathed. The deal was done. The real fixing could begin. By week's end, the door read, Miller Legal Partners. We didn't throw confetti, we cleared backlogs. Payroll first, rent second, vendors by need, not volume. I stood in the break room and told the team what older adults already know. Stability is kindness. We tightened expenses, killed vanity projects, and set a simple promise on the wall. Clients first, facts faster. HR asked about culture. I said culture is what people feel at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday when things go wrong. We trained for that moment. Associates learned to write shorter emails. Partners learned to make earlier calls. Everyone learned where the passwords live. I kept my office light low and my door open, the old manager's trick that says, we'll talk like grown-ups. At noon, deposits hit. Phones softened, shoulders dropped. The printer spat out fresh letterhead, black ink still wet. We swapped every file label in one long, quiet hour. When the new sign clipped into place, the floor seemed to level. Once the bleeding stopped, the question arrived, do I spend the next year polishing a win, or do I build something worth missing when I'm gone? People my age collect moments that warn us. Hospital bracelets, funeral programs, a friend's call at midnight. Revenge burns fast. Legacy pays interest. That night, I poured coffee instead of whiskey and wrote 2 columns on a yellow pad. Prove a point on the left, move a needle on the right. The left filled quick. Press quotes, industry panels, told you so dinners. The right stayed lean but heavier. Evictions prevented. Families stabilized. Cases that mattered more than headlines. I remembered the kitchen table version of us, before chandeliers and speeches, talking about justice you could measure in warm apartments and settled stomachs. I circled move a needle. I slept like I had picked a road, not a mood. In the morning, I emailed a name I hadn't called in years, someone who fights the quiet fights. The reply came back in minutes. Come by. Liberty Legal Alliance sits in a converted storefront where the carpet doesn't match, but the mission does. The waiting room held 2 strollers, 3 languages, and a bulletin board of Know Your Rights flyers. Lydia Torres met me with a handshake that said law school polish and neighborhood grit. We keep the heat on and the wolves back, she said, nodding toward a stack of eviction files. She walked me past whiteboards crowded with deadlines, toward a windowless closet they call the library, because hope needs jokes. Older listeners know that room, the church basement, the VFW hall, the place where underfunded miracles get planned. What would you do with real runway? I asked. Lydia didn't blink. Hire 15. Expand clinics. Build a pipeline so students don't have to choose between rent and doing the right thing. She didn't pitch. She reported. Every sentence was a receipt for need. We ended where we started, the waiting room. A mother bounced a baby to sleep. The answer felt obvious. I've signed checks that bought furniture, futures, and foolishness. This one felt different in my hand, heavy like good cast iron. 10 million, I said, sliding the envelope across a table that had seen better coffee. Grant, not loan. Spend it like it has to look me in the eye in a year. Lydia didn't cry. Professionals don't at first. She took a breath that sounded like a roof settling after a storm. Here's what happens, she said. Clinics in 2 more neighborhoods. A hotline that doesn't die at 5. Staff who can afford to stay. Training so first years aren't learning on someone's crisis. I nodded and added 1 clause. Public reporting we could both be proud of. No strings. Just sunlight. The receptionist peeked in, saw the check, and covered her mouth the way people do when hope sneaks up on them. We shook hands like we were agreeing to build a bridge. Then my phone buzzed. Bank confirmation. Funds in motion. The room changed temperature. Money turns into proof in strange, ordinary ways. 2 weeks later, Liberty's phone stayed live past dinner, and a landlord settled because someone finally had time to read the lease line by line. A young attorney called her mother to say she could pay rent doing work that mattered. That's grown-up joy, small, sustainable, paid on time. We launched Saturday clinics with coffee and clipboards. People lined the sidewalk without panic because the line moved. I stood in back and watched a man leave holding a folder and his posture, both higher. Back at Miller Legal Partners, we mirrored the rigor. Quarterly reports, open books, cases triaged by impact and feasibility. No savior talk, just service. Lydia sent a photo of a new sign over their door. Same font, brighter paint. "We'll wear the hope out," she wrote. I printed it and taped it to my wall where the trophies might have gone. Revenge had been loud. This was quiet, and louder where it mattered. By midweek, the headlines stopped sounding like gossip and started reading like homework. Reporters called it a takedown. Law blogs called it documentation done right. A dean emailed, short, polite, curious. "Would you speak to our students about investment ethics?" I said yes after payroll ran and vendors cleared. Order before opinions. The story shifted in real time. Not man scorned, but systems protected. It reminded me of every older mentor who told me, "Make choices you can defend under lights." I released one statement, plain, not spicy. We followed the contracts we signed. The blowback came and went like lake weather. The measured voices stayed. A case note landed in my inbox from a student I didn't know, outlining Section 7.3 like it was scripture. He thanked me for making the fine print feel like a life raft. I read it twice, set it beside my coffee, and understood the new frame. This wasn't the end of a mess. It was the start of a lesson. I walked into a classroom at the University of Chicago with a stack of handouts and a promise to keep it real. No theatrics. Just the anatomy of a deal you can sleep with. I told them what older listeners already know. Memory blurs, paper doesn't. We traced the arc from trust to terms to tests under pressure. They leaned forward when I said the quiet part. You sign guardrails when you're happy because you'll need them when you're not. After class, a veteran who'd gone back to law school shook my hand and said, "That's how we clear rooms, procedures before panic." A week later at Stanford, I gave the keynote with the same sermon. Receipts are love letters to your future self. The Q&A turned into a clinic on how to build without breaking. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt useful. Useful is better. On the flight home, I wrote 3 words in my notebook for the first time. Teach, build, repeat. News travels in soft circles. I heard Madison took a position at a nonprofit clinic. Small office, big heart. Someone sent a photo of her under a flickering light, smiling like the work fit. I didn't forward it. I didn't file it either. Some things you just let sit. She wrote once, spare and honest, owning choices, asking for no favors, wishing me steadiness. I wrote back the same. No extra adjectives, only respect. We didn't trade versions of the past. We traded peace. Older couples know this is the grown-up ending. Not fireworks, not friendlies, just quiet lanes moving in different directions. I walked our old block one evening, past a cafe where we used to argue about fonts and futures, and realized nostalgia is a kind thief. It takes the sharp edges off what cuts you. I paid for a stranger's coffee and kept walking. The city felt lighter, or maybe I did. Either way, I understood. We're not a story. We're 2 new ones. I met Rebecca at a round table on ethics and outcomes. No spotlight, just long tables and longer questions. She listened like a judge and laughed like a neighbor. We argued gently about incentives, then spent an hour swapping case studies like recipes. Dinner turned into a second dinner, then a Saturday museum date where we read plaques out loud because grown-up romance is conversation with good shoes. She didn't need my headlines. She wanted my homework. "What's the next fix?" she asked. We sketched it on a napkin, a small fellowship that trains young lawyers to balance mission with math, paired with a toolkit any clinic can download for free. No big stage, big impact. She challenged my blind spots and circled my best lines. I slept better with her questions in the room. On a rainy night, we walked past the courthouse steps and I said, "I'm ready to build the part that lasts." She squeezed my hand once. "Then let's begin." Here's what I learned. Humiliation is loud, but paperwork is patient. Saturday night gave me a headline. Monday morning gave me the controls. I didn't smash the firm, I rewired it. Then I wrote a check that turned slogans into apartments and paid staff. That was the switch. From proving a point to moving a needle. The best revenge isn't destruction, it's building better. Their betrayal? Background noise to a larger score, clients served, clinics open, students trained to balance mission with math. I'm not the man they applauded for losing. I'm the man who picked the lock with a clause and opened the door for others. So here's your part. If this were your life, your savings, paperwork, name on the lease, what would you do next? Burn it for applause or build it for impact? Comment red or green, tell me why. If you choose green, stick around, starting now. The next chapter isn't louder, it's longer, and you'll help write it.